Good evening and welcome to the 34th Assembly District Debate here on Newswatch 12. I'm Justin Benning. This is the first of 3 debates we're planning to host leading up to the November 3rd election. This one is for the seat in the State Assembly. Tonight we are joined by the 2 candidates for that seat, Republican Rob Swearingen in the red tie and Democrat Kirk Bangstad in the blue. We aim to help you get to know our candidates a bit better over the next 60 minutes, but because of our COVID-19, our setup, of course, a bit different tonight. In order to ensure proper social distancing, we are spread out in the Newswatch 12 studio. There's plexiglass between the candidates. There is no audience here tonight, though in addition to everyone watching at home on Newswatch 12, we are also live streaming tonight's debate on Facebook, so feel free to give your thoughts or suggest some questions. We may use them on air. Before we get to that, though, a quick background on each candidate. Mr. Swearingen, a Republican, seeking his 5th term holding this seat. Before that, he was president of the Wisconsin Tavern League. He's the owner of the Algen Dinner Club in Rhinelander. Mr. Bangstad, the Democrat nominee for this seat, owns the Minocqua Brewing Company and is president of the Minocqua Island Business Association. Before that, he was an opera singer and technology company consultant. Now tonight, unlike some other debates where a moderator may ask one candidate one question, then another candidate a different question, I'll be asking both candidates essentially the same questions. They'll each have 1 minute to respond to each question, followed by 30 seconds each for rebuttal. We'll alternate who goes first. Before we get to those questions, each candidate also gets 1 minute to provide an opening statement. Mr. Bangstad won the coin toss. He'll be going first. Mr. Bangstad, you may begin.
Great. Thanks a lot, WJFW, for hosting this debate tonight. I'm Kirk Bangstad. I grew up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I went to high school at the Stevens Point Area Senior High, SPASH. We won the state championship cross-country meet that year. I was lucky enough and blessed to get into Harvard University, where I majored in political science and government. After that, I went to California and was a management consultant for technology companies. I went back to Northwestern University to major in vocal performance and opera, and moved to New York to do both consulting and singing. I met my wife in New York, and unfortunately she was diagnosed with cancer, and so we left our jobs in New York and traveled and ended up vacationing in Minocqua. We loved it so much there. We loved the lakes and streams that we went to, I bought the brewing company, and that's where we are now. I'm running for office because I believe we can do better for the citizens of Wisconsin. I was thoroughly sad when they made us all vote in April, and that's why I got into the race, because I thought Swearingen was putting politics over our health in Wisconsin.
All right, thank you. Mr. Swearingen, you also have 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much, Channel 12 and Justin Betty, for moderating this important debate tonight and for giving us the opportunity to talk about the issues affecting the 34th Assembly District. I'm Rob Swearingen, a lifelong resident of Rhinelander, a 1981 graduate of Rhinelander High School, a husband to an amazing wife, Amy, of 28 years, and the father of 2 incredible girls, Jenny and Jessie. And I've been a small business owner in the community for over 30 years. It has been a privilege of a lifetime to serve as your state representative for the past 8 years. When I first ran for office, our state was in a terrible fiscal crisis. At the time, our state had no rainy day fund, and our unemployment fund was bankrupt, all while borrowing money from the federal government to keep us afloat. Since taking office, our state has seen a tremendous comeback. Over the last 8 years, the tax burden is at the lowest in 50 years. We have the largest rainy day fund in history, and funding for K-12 public service public schools is at an all-time high. The pandemic will certainly recreate some of the same challenges we faced in the past. The Northwoods needs an advocate in Madison to maintain our values and our way of life. In my service, I've done just this, and I look forward to continuing this work next session. And that's why I decided to run for another term and why I'm asking for your support on November 3rd.
Thank you. In the first section of this debate now, we are going to focus on the obvious big story, COVID-19. Right now, Wisconsin is a hot spot for the virus. DHS reports we are averaging over 2,000 new cases a day over the last few weeks. To date, the state has seen more than 150,000 confirmed cases, around 2,000 deaths. Of course, Governor Evers extended Wisconsin's mask mandate to November 21st recently. Many Republican legislators are opposed to that. Some believe it is unconstitutional. Mr. Swearingen, Mr. Bangstad, do you support the mandate? And regardless of the mandate, do you encourage your constituents to wear masks? We begin with Mr. Swearingen.
So I don't necessarily support the mandate. I think that people here in the Northwoods were doing a fantastic job before the governor waved his dictatorial magical wand and made it a mask mandate. It's pretty obvious that if you go into one of our retailers, I'll use Walmart or Home Depot or Menards or Mel's Trading Post, if they have a sign on the door that says that you should be wearing a mask, that's absolutely what you need to be doing. And as well, if you feel comfortable wearing a mask, you should be doing that. I'm more concerned about people in our elderly in nursing homes. I understand it's an imposition for family to visit them, but those are the people that the virus obviously affects more. And so the rest of us at some point need to go about our business. But that being said, absolutely. If the sign says wear a mask, please wear a mask.
Mr. Bangstad, you also have 1 minute.
So let's just put this into perspective. Trump said wearing masks was ridiculous. The right-wing websites and right-wing media has said wearing masks was ridiculous. We have known for months now that wearing masks is what we're told to do in order to spread the virus. Wisconsin is probably one of the worst hotspots right now in the state or in the country. And the reason is because half our population is listening to Trump, listening to Rob Swearingen, listening to the Republican majority legislature, and not actually listening to our public health officials who say that mask wearing is good. So the reason we're a hotspot is because we're being misled by our Republican leaders. So what we need to be doing is be wearing masks, and if Evers has got to make a mandate to do it because people won't listen, then that's what he's got to do. The Republicans haven't met for 6 months. How are we supposed to, he's got to do something in order to stop the spread of the virus.
Mr. Swearingen, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, sure. Once again, if the sign on the door says wear a mask, please wear a mask. The issue here with the governor and lawsuits is that the governor has overreached, and he may not be able to have done what he has done. And that's what the courts are deciding now and moving forward. So like I say, if the sign says wear a mask, please wear a mask. I'm not disencouraging anybody from not wearing a mask.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I think that's a bit disingenuous, Representative Swearingen. What we should be doing is wearing masks in Wisconsin. And if people aren't willing to do it, then somebody's got to tell them to do it. And if it's the governor, it's the governor. What you should have been doing is meeting for the last 6 months to actually work with Governor Evers to try to encourage the folks that are listening to you and not him to wear masks. It's on you that people are getting COVID in Wisconsin right now.
All right, we mentioned this in the intros. Both candidates here own and operate restaurants in the Northwoods. This week, Governor Evers signed another mandate to reduce capacity in bars and restaurants to 25%. Can you explain some of the measures you may have taken at your restaurants and what you think of the governor's latest order? We begin with Mr. Bangstad.
So as soon as this thing happened, I remember March 17th, St. Patty's Day, we had a huge dinner planned, and it was going to be a blowout. We had to shut down the restaurant, and we immediately went to carry out and delivery. And I had all my employees wearing masks and rubber gloves, which we changed after each delivery. I've been the safest restaurant in Minocqua and probably the 34th Assembly District. We only served outside all summer long. I have closed my brew pub because we are gaining, because it's become a hot spot and because so many people refuse to wear masks, and I don't think it would be safe for my employees to actually work in a restaurant right now. So I understand why the governor reduced it to 25%. Now, would I like it as a restaurant owner? No, but that's what you got to do if you haven't reined in the virus. We should have reined this thing in July if we actually had a plan and the Republicans worked with Evers to make that plan work.
Mr. Swearingen, what measures you've taken at the restaurant and what you think of the mandate?
Well, first of all, the mandate obviously took effect this morning. So the restaurant is open now. And quite frankly, this time of the year, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, probably won't be a big deal for us. But I challenge any small business owner or anybody of the viewing audience to take a 75% cut in income. And that's what, once again, the dictator in the east wing of the Capitol has waved his wand and now capped 25% to all these hospitality businesses. It is very frustrating, to say the least, especially since you come off of being closed for 2 months this spring, and then only to come back and hopefully bounce back, make some money in the summertime when the tourists are here and the locals are out spending their money, and then have the carpet pulled out from underneath us. But that being said, we'll make sure we have sanitizer on every table. We'll make sure the waitresses that are capable of wearing a mask will be wearing a mask. Those are the things you have to do to protect your customers and, of course, your employees.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
We've been given a false choice by Republicans time and time out that says we either have to close our economy or we have to just let people die with COVID. That's a false choice. What our government should be doing, instead of taking a vacation for 6 months, is to work with Governor Evers to try to see how we can prop up small businesses like restaurants, like the both of us own, with small business grants to be able to make sure that we we can live through this while practicing safety. We don't have to kill our economy if we help small businesses and the unemployed out while dealing with COVID.
Mr. Swearingen, you also have 30 seconds.
Oh, well, actually, my opponent must have forgotten about the Wisconsin Economic Development grants that were available under We're All In. And those have been fantastic. And kudos to WEDC for those grants. And the governor just announced again yesterday another $100 million in similar grants, which is very well appreciated to these small businesses. But here again, it is frustrating that they're going to pull the carpet up underneath us. And as we find out today, it'll probably be challenged again in court because the Secretary of Health Services didn't have the authority to do what she did. So the beat goes on.
We're going to springboard a bit off what you guys are talking about anyway. A WISCpolitics.com review recently found Wisconsin's legislature has been the least active full-time state legislative body in the country since states began taking measures to combat COVID-19. So if not a mask mandate, what do you think the state should do to protect citizens from the virus? We get Mr. Swearingen.
Well, you know, you can stand up here and say that we should be meeting, but the fact of the matter is this. Both sides of the aisle, the Democrats and the Republicans, agree each session on what the calendar will be. Typically, we work probably 14, 15 months in a row, and then we break, and it typically is the election cycle. Now, that's not saying the governor can't call us in. That's not saying that we can't go in if he does call us in. But the fact of the matter is the governor has been unwilling to work with the state legislature at every turn. He is in control of all the money from the CARES Act and the money that we passed on the COVID-19 relief bill. And so that's the fact of the matter is the governor is not willing to work with the legislature. And I understand there's two sides to the coin. We could be doing a better job at that as well. But that's the process.
Mr. Bangstad, what should the legislature be doing?
The legislature should be leading. The legislature should be leading. The legislature should be leading, as opposed to not working with our governor, as opposed to shirking all responsibility to meet and forcing our governor to elongate elongate safer at home, to do mask mandates. They should be passing mask mandates right now. You know, they should be actually trying to figure out how we can do school virtually, how to actually put broadband Wi-Fi sites all around the North Woods so that kids don't get sick when going back to school. They refuse to do anything. They've refused to lead because they don't want to be pinned down on making decisions that are tough decisions that actually people disagree with. So they leave it all to Evers and then blame him for making the tough decisions. I think it's ridiculous and reprehensible.
Mr. Swearingen, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, well, here again, my opponent absolutely has no clue what he's talking about, doesn't understand the process. So I'll say it again. We meet, we decide what the calendar will be, and certainly we're able to go in after that. That's obvious. We're in a special session right now. But quite frankly, the governor has been unwilling. And like I say, there's two sides to the coin. We could do a better job of that as well. I don't disagree. But my opponent clearly has no clue what the process is.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds.
So when he says, my opponent says the governor is unwilling to work with him, he's called the legislature, I believe, in 4 times to deal with issues that are super important to us. After the Kenosha killings, he called the legislature in to talk about systemic racism. They gavelled in, they gavelled out. When we had a Wisconsin dairy crisis, he called them in. Let's deal with the crisis. They gavelled in, they gavelled out. You call that not working with Governor Evers? It's the other way around. These guys refuse to lead because they're cynical and they want to pin all the blame for the tough decisions on our governor.
All right, we've talked a lot about coronavirus already. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into some other topics as well, starting with who they support for president and why. You're watching the 34th Assembly District debate here on Newswatch 12. Welcome back to the 34th Assembly District debate here on Newswatch 12. Again, I am Justin Betty. We are joined by Democrat Kirk Bangstad and Republican Rob Swearingen. Mr. Swearingen in the red, seeking his 5th term in the Assembly. Mr. Bangstad trying to become the first Democrat to win this seat in nearly 30 years. Of course, 2020, besides just a local election year, a state election year, is a presidential election year. So let's briefly turn our attention to that. Our question, of course, who are you supporting for president, which may be obvious, and more importantly, why? We begin with Mr. Bangstad.
I'm supporting Joe Biden for president. The reasons why are pretty simple. So About a week ago, we counted our 200,000th death from COVID. 200,000 people in America over now have died because Trump refused to lead in February when this first happened. He never had a national plan. He forced the states to have a patchwork quilt of plans. Some states did it well, some states did it poorly. That meant the people who did it poorly, infected the other states. So he completely failed on dealing with COVID, and now we still have it, whereas most other developed nations have tamped it down. Secondly, he has assaulted our democracy for the whole time he's been in office. Between voting suppression and refusing to leave office if he loses, it's an abomination. Third, misinformation. We've heard lies upon lies upon lies from him ever since he started office, talking about the deaths. He wouldn't acknowledge the deaths. He lied about the science of masks, and he lied about the effectiveness of testing.
You're about out of time, but you'll have 30 seconds again in a second. Mr. Swearingen, who do you support for president and why?
Well, I'm guessing it's no big surprise that I'm a Donald Trump fan, right? And so I had the fortunate event, experience to attend a Donald Trump speech at the White House about 6 weeks ago. And I am here to tell you that I believe that Donald Trump is an overachiever. I really appreciate what he's done in cutting red tape and what he's done with deregulation across this country, saving manufacturers and farmers alike money by cutting back. If you give one regulation, he'll take 8 away, and that really impressed me. And as far as Joe Biden's concerned, and it's been said throughout the campaign for the president, 47 years he's been in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump's been there 47 months and has done more. So it's a pretty clear choice. I'm going to vote for President Donald Trump.
Mr. Banks, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal or to continue your thought.
Representative Swearingen, did you wear a mask when you met with Donald Trump?
Actually, we had to have a mask to get in, yes.
You wore
but
a mask?
I never met the president.
Okay. Because seemingly when Donald Trump has gatherings, he doesn't wear masks. And he has super spreading events in the Rose Garden when he does.
Yeah, and you saw him wearing a mask on television just yesterday and today.
Yeah, well, it's because he's got COVID now, thank God.
Thank God he has COVID?
Thank God he's wearing a mask so he protects other people from getting sick. Because that's what he's been doing for the last 6 months, is helping people get sick and dying from COVID.
Mr. Swearingen, you also have 30 seconds.
No, my opponent here is fear-mongering, and that's pretty obvious. And I get his disdain for Donald Trump because, he's a tax and spend liberal just like all the Democrats before him. The fact of the matter is, 47 years, Joe Biden has done nothing in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump is getting the job done, and he's my guy.
All right, let's move on to the topic of schools. Been forced to make a lot of changes and adjustments, of course, some tough decisions because of COVID-19. The Republican-controlled Wisconsin legislature hasn't issued any real guidance for schools, preferring to let local districts come up with their own plans, nor do they really give any supplemental funds beyond the federal support for things like cleaning and ways to deal with COVID-19. So to both, what do you think the state should have done or perhaps done differently? We begin with Mr. Swearingen.
Well, I mean, we passed the COVID relief bill, dovetailing off the CARES Act back in, I believe it was in April. As far as local schools, I think that you have to give kudos to the districts here in the 34th Assembly District. So whether it's Florence or Northland Pines or the Rylander School District, they have their set of rules and regulations that seems to be working. Now, my opponent feels, of course, that all schools should be closed. Why? Because he thinks he knows better than all the superintendents, all the school boards, and, of course, all the parents that send their kids to these schools. I leave it up to the school districts. They may very well have to go virtual. If that's how the cards are dealt, that's probably what they do. But I respect those decisions on the local level.
Mr. Bangstad, what should the state have done for schools?
Representative Swearingen mentioned that he was proud of schools getting funding earlier. He signed a letter in the beginning of the summer saying that unless they went back to school virtually, he didn't want them to get funding. That's the kind of representative that we're dealing with right now. Now, my thoughts on going back to school is listening to the scientists. We've got the World Health Organization and we've got Harvard University saying that we need to have 3 to 5% positivity rates before we can put kids back in school. Positivity rates meaning everyone who gets, out of 100 people who get tested, 3 to 5 people are actually testing positive. You know what it is in Wisconsin right now? It's 20%. 20% positivity rate, which means it's not safe to send kids back to school. What we should have been doing this whole summer, and what the Republican legislature didn't do because they were on vacation, is to figure out ways that we could make virtual schooling better and more effective, and to get Wi-Fi up in the Northwoods so that we can actually teach kids virtually instead of playing politics with kids' health like they've been doing all this time.
Mr. Swearingen, you have 30 seconds.
Well, clearly the science also says that schools are a learning environment. And so the sports levels, they're also something that science says that's good for kids. And now we have problems with mental health. Now we have problems with suicide. All because we're closing the schools, or my opponent would like to close the schools. So here again, let's leave it up to locals to decide.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
So let's be honest. We all know going back to school is better when you go back physically. I mean, it's better for the kids, you know, but you got to make decisions. You got to make tough decisions, which Representative Swearingen refuses to do. The tough decisions are you got to keep kids safe first. You got to keep teachers safe first before you send them back. And that's what the problem is. We're putting politics over the health of our kids, over the health of our teachers. Teachers have already died because they've had to go back to school. I think the teachers union is suing because of that. This is what's going on because these guys refuse to leave.
Well, 2020, in addition to an election year, is a census year. It means we have political redistricting coming up. Governor Evers has ordered the new independent panel to drop the congressional and legislative maps. That would still need to be approved by lawmakers. Many lawmakers, especially Republicans, have opposed that, saying that that's their job. So the question is, who should draw the maps? We begin with Mr. Bangstad.
So in 2011, let's set the context here. Scott Walker was a Republican governor, and both houses, I believe, were Republican. So they had the complete power to do what they wanted with the census. So 2011, they hired a lawyer. The lawyer took a computer program and drew lines around all the different districts to make sure that the Republicans had the biggest advantage ever in the state of Wisconsin. So essentially, they cheated. They cheated, and what happened was, in 2018, 54% of the votes for all assembly candidates went to Democratic candidates. But guess what? 61% of the seats went to Republicans. So they absolutely cheated and won. And we should have a majority Democratic assembly right now, but we don't. So what needs to happen is, you should think about it. You got a fox in the hen house. You got to take the power to set the lines away from people who benefit from those lines. Give it to a nonpartisan committee who will do it because they just want to have good roads in our town.
Mr. Swearingen, who should draw the districts?
So when I got elected, I swore to uphold the Wisconsin Constitution. And the Wisconsin Constitution gives the absolute power to draw the maps to the legislature. And that's what we're doing. Every 10 years it comes up. So on its face, a nonpartisan redistricting committee drawn up by the governor, the Democratic governor of the state of Wisconsin, does not work. So everybody is partisan in some way, shape, or form, and I've seen the list that he appointed, which makes no sense. So I think that we'll continue to do what we're doing, and you can see exactly what's going to happen here. The legislature will draw the maps. The maps will then go to the governor will reject the maps, and then the maps will go to the courts. And unfortunately, that's the divided government we're under, and that's probably how it's going to happen.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds if you'd like it.
It's amazing that Representative Swearingen says that the legislature, by the Constitution, has the ability to draw the maps. Well, you can ask him. They put that responsibility onto a high-paid lawyer to use a computer program. That's not the legislature drawing the maps. That's using somebody they bought and paid for to do it. So just switch it over to a non-partisan. It's been done in many other states and proven to work. So he can say that it's not going to be partisan or bipartisan. It will be. Other states have proved it can work. He just wants to suppress the vote and undermine democracy.
Mr. Swearingen, you also have 30 seconds.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, my opponent is just clueless. That's the Constitution. That's what's in the Constitution. I uphold the Constitution. I understand we have a Democratic governor. I get that. But at the end of the day, there's not too many nonpartisan people that are going to be appointed by a Democratic governor to draw the maps. So the maps have been drawn in the past. Even in the last decade, there was one challenge in Milwaukee, which was later fixed, and the maps were obviously challenged beyond that. So the legislature will draw the maps as they're supposed to.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here, but we're just getting warmed up. When we come back, we have lots more to talk about, including the threat of PFAS on our local drinking water. You're watching the 34th Assembly District debate here on Newswatch 12. Welcome back to the 34th Assembly District debate here on Newswatch 12. Again, I'm Justin Betty. We are joined by Democrat Kirk Bangstad in the blue and Republican Rob Swearingen in the red. PFAS is a potentially hazardous chemical found in Oneida County water, among other places. 2 wells have been shut down in Rhinelander due to PFAS contamination. If one more gets shut down, we've heard from some water experts telling us the city might not have enough drinking water. The question for the candidates, how will you address the PFAS situation in Rhinelander? We begin with Mr. Swearingen.
Yeah, the PFAS issue in Rhinelander is certainly very serious when you're talking about people's drinking water. And we don't want to play politics with people's drinking water, and I believe that this is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. So I have worked very closely with Representative John Nygren. He is the Assembly representative from the Marinette area. Peshtigo has had some serious problems with PFAS. They are trying to address it there. The problems we have is that we need to clean it. So the Assembly has been working. In the last round, we had a water quality task force put together by the Speaker. They went around the state. They had many hearings, including one in Tomahawk, which I attended. As a result of that, there were 13 bills for water quality, some of which included PFAS. Those bills were passed through the Assembly. They sit, unfortunately, because of COVID, they sit in the Senate. We're hoping that the Senate moves on those at some point before November. So some of the issues have been addressed, and look forward to working with everybody to get those issues solved.
Mr. Bangstad, how would you address the PFAS situation?
Okay, so let's set some context here. So he's right, Nygren and Hansen, which is a Democratic senator, came up with a bill that was going to give grants to clean up the water in Rhinelander and other cities affected by PFAS. Now, that bill got squashed by what I call the pollution lobby, which is the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce and the Wisconsin Paper Council. That bill never got out of committee because these lobbyists own the Republican legislature, and so they squashed it. So now, Representative Swearingen is going to say that he came up with this great amendment that was going to do something to help PFAS. What it was a backroom amendment at midnight that did a couple things. It made, instead of the polluters cleaning up PFAS, it transferred all of that cost to the cities and to the taxpayers. And also it allowed the companies that polluted to set the standards for what PFAS should be, the dangers of it. It's like letting the fox in the hen house to set the standards for pollution. You don't do that. He took us 2 steps back instead of putting us forward. You'll
have 30 seconds in a second. First, Mr. Swearingen, I assume you want to respond to that. You'll have 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's amazing how my opponent can just keep regurgitating the same remarks and think it's true. So the amendment that he talks about does not do what he said, so he is in fact a liar. And also with the other 2 bills, I was a co-sponsor with Nygren and Hansen. Right here I have both of the pieces of legislation. So I have put forth some good stuff. Obviously the 2 bills did not go anywhere. My sense is that there's some stakeholders that had some heartburn with them. But the amendment that I put forward did actually pass the Assembly, and unfortunately does sit in the Senate.
Mr. Bangstad, you also have 30 seconds if you'd like.
These amendments didn't go through because the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce lobby and the Wisconsin Paper Council didn't want them to go through. Over the last 10 years, the lobbyists in this state have run the state of Wisconsin because they own the Wisconsin Republican majority legislature. That's the reason these bills don't go through. Evers would have signed it. It was introduced by Republicans and Democrats. It would have gone through, but the lobbyists decided it wasn't going to go through because they own these guys.
Governor Tony Evers tried, among other things, to pass a bill accepting Medicaid expansion while in office, allowing families to make up to $30,000 a year to enroll. It's an option provided by the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. The Republican-controlled legislature did not take him up on that, arguing it would be, in part, too costly to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's one of about a dozen states not to expand Medicaid. We begin with Mr. Bangstad. How do you feel about the possible Medicaid expansion?
So you said that we're one of 12 states that haven't accepted this yet. Oklahoma and Missouri were the last 2 states that accepted it. They're about as red as it gets. And they're accepting it because they had referenda by the states that went beyond the actual politicians and put it to the people. The people know that expanding Medicaid will allow them to have more health benefits. Also, the state of Wisconsin, which faces huge budget shortfalls, will benefit by $200 million this year if we actually accept it. So not only will we be helping our budget, we'll be giving health care in a time of global pandemic to more people. It's a no-brainer, and the fact that we haven't accepted it is completely a cynical move because of the Republicans wanted to stick it to Obama and not accept Obamacare, essentially, because this is part of Obamacare.
Mr. Swearengin, your thoughts on a Medicaid expansion?
Yeah, sure, we can't take it. It's way too expensive, right? So we cover 100% below the poverty line now. If we take and put another 85,000 people on Medicaid, that is going to cost the state of Wisconsin, I've seen estimates as much, I see one here, for $600 million a year. So it's pretty clear it's an expansion of welfare. We're going to take people off the Obama exchanges and put them on Medicaid. And that's going to raise everybody's health insurance up, their premiums up, medical visits to hospitals will go up because it's free. Everything's free money. Well, nothing's free. And taking Medicaid expansion would be the wrong move.
Mr. Bankstead, you have 30 seconds.
Everything that Representative Swearengin just said has been proven false time and time again. But it's great talking points to talk about the people that are getting welfare, because apparently we hate people getting welfare. Well, you know what? Let's help the poor and the middle class, because we've had a huge transfer of money between the poor and the middle class to the rich over the last 10 years. Let's do something for a change and help them. You know, we can help them by giving them more health care. It's not going to bankrupt us. We're going to get more money. That's what they're going to say. Hospitals can run more efficiently when more people are on Medicaid. That's been proven through economic studies.
Mr. Swearengin, you also have 30 seconds.
Yeah, just keep in mind that Wisconsin is also one of the few of only states that doesn't have a coverage gap. And so we're doing a good job with that. In addition, we also give 100% the rest of the benefits of Medicaid. So all that costs money. And so to move those people off of the exchanges and onto Badger Care is going to cost the state upwards of $600 million.
All right, time now for another short break. We'll be right back. You're watching the 34th Assembly District Debate here on Newswatch 12. Welcome back to the 34th Assembly District Debate here on Newswatch 12. Again, I am Justin Betty. We are joined by Democrat Kirk Bangstad and Republican Rob Swearengin. Our next topic. Marijuana is now legal for adults for recreational use in 11 states. It's legal for medical use in 33. It remains completely illegal in Wisconsin. Would you like to see that change, and if so, how? We begin with Mr. Swearengin.
So thank you for the question. I believe marijuana is a gateway drug. And so I would not be in favor at all for recreational marijuana. I spent a lot of time over the last session talking to law enforcement about what's going on with the drug problem in the Northwoods. And I can tell you I spent time with Sheriff Dan Miller up in Florence County, where it's legal in Michigan, and the problems they're having with marijuana coming over the border. So we don't want those problems in the state of Wisconsin, especially closer to the Northwoods. It's scary stuff what's happening in Vilas County, talking to Sheriff Joe Fath, in Oneida County, Grady Hartman. And we don't need the problems we have now, trafficking coming up. So in terms of medical marijuana, maybe if it was prescribed by a medical doctor and filled by a licensed pharmacy, I would have to see the bill. But at this point, I'm not sure how close I'd be to it.
Mr. Bangstad, your thoughts?
Yeah, this really hits home for me. My wife passed away from cancer 2 years ago. And we couldn't get medical marijuana in Wisconsin, which has been proven to be the most natural painkiller for people with cancer. So the fact that in many states you can get medical marijuana would have really helped ease her pain, and so she suffered because we don't have it here. Now, I run a bar and a restaurant just like Representative Swearengin does, and we see alcoholics, all the time. People abuse booze up here all the time. They drink one too many old fashions. Marijuana to me is not a whole lot different than booze, and the fact that if you're going to be addicted to something, you're going to be addicted. If you're not, you're going to be not. Now, what we do have though is we've imprisoned hundreds or thousands of people because of marijuana use, and we actually spend more in our prison system than our public schools, I believe. So we should stop that and legalize it.
Mr. Swearingen, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, not much of a rebuttal, really. I just will reiterate that, and I think it was in the last session, Representative Mary Felskowski actually had, she put a lot of time and effort into a bill that that would have addressed the medical marijuana issue, and I respect her work on that bill. But I would, once again, if it's prescribed by, perhaps by a medical doctor and filled by a licensed pharmacy, maybe I would be able to take a look at it. But I'm not sold on the whole idea.
Mr. Bankston, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
So this is a theme I've not brought up a lot, but it matters here. I think there's so many issues that we're talking about tonight that public opinion has already said, let's do it. And so Representative Swearingen, once again, they're not really listening to their constituency. Most people are for legalizing marijuana. They know it's not really going to lead to violent crime or anything. It actually would probably decrease violent crime. So I think that this is the one where they're not listening to constituency, and we should just legalize it, and we should actually listen to public opinion on this one.
Wisconsin made national news this year when Jacob Blake was shot in the back by police in Kenosha, leading to massive protests and violence in the city. What kind of police reform would you like to see, if any, and how do you feel about the protests? We begin with Mr. Bangstad.
So let's set the stage, right? We haven't had lots of protests and people being enraged by what's going on in America before Trump was elected office. When you have a president who's actively encouraging white supremacists to come out of the woods, essentially, then you have people who have been systemic, like you have black and brown people and colored people who have been the recipients of racism for a long time, who don't feel like anybody's got their back. So what's going on is this is the rage that's happening. Now, what we should be doing is not defunding the police, obviously. We should actually just take some things off of their plate, like mental health issues. If we actually refunded mental health issues and actually had the people to take care of those that were mentally sick, then these issues wouldn't happen as much. And I'll talk more during my rebuttal.
That sounds fair. Mr. Swearingen, any police reform you'd like to see, and how do you feel about the protests?
Well, it's a serious question, and clearly what's been going on, these aren't protests, they're riots. What happened in Madison, where they tore down statues at the People's House, where they busted windows on the ground floors, where they took out all the businesses in State Street, those are not protests, those are riots. And first of all, I believe everybody should have the chance for a peaceful protest. That's part of what makes us America. What happened in Kenosha, again, another sad situation. I'm not going to debate whether Jacob Blake was a good guy or a bad guy. But what I do appreciate is the Speaker Robin Vos putting together a task force on racial injustice and police policy. And so I'm interested to see what the governor has to offer in his package, what guys like Senator Van Wanggaard have to offer in his package, and of course what comes out of this task force. And I support Representative Jim Steineke and Lakeisha Myers, the co-chairs of this task force, and I look forward to hopefully getting something done to address the racial injustice.
Mr. Bangstad, you have 30 seconds.
So the funny thing about task force is that it's Robin Vos's way of not working with the governor. Every time we put a task force together, we can just kind of not take care of an issue that's bubbling over right now, so that we can just like have it disappear and deal with it later. So this task force idea is bunk. Now, next, everybody agrees that looting and violence is terrible, and people who are doing that should be punished. Unfortunately, Republicans are telling the Democrats that this is somehow confluent, a similar thing. Looting and violence is one thing. Systemic racism another. We have to separate that.
Mr. Swearingen, you also have 30 seconds if you want.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to law enforcement. I tell you what, the defunding police talk is ridiculous, and we need to support our law enforcement. And I'll tell you, if you don't know it now, Oneida County, for instance, sent a team down to Kenosha, and they were actually in charge of the entire operation for a while. I'm very proud of our men and women in blue, and in this case, the brown guys from the Oneida County uniforms as well. So I appreciate those guys, and I'm looking forward to getting something done with this whole issue.
All right, we're going to take one last quick little breather here and hear more about what their candidates and their vision for the Northwoods. After the break, you're watching the 34th Assembly District Debate here on Newswatch 12. And welcome back to the 34th Assembly District Debate here on Newswatch 12. Let's talk a little bit about the future. To the candidates, what is your vision for the future of the 34th Assembly District? How will you help us get us there as Assemblyman? We begin with Mr. Swearingen.
Well, I tell you what, I want to continue my work, and I believe this is the most important issue in the 34th Assembly District and here in the Northwoods, is broadband connectivity. We have made great strides over the last 8 years. Certainly when Senator Tiffany was in the state capitol, he and I worked hand in hand getting more money for the 34th Assembly District and the 12th Senate District and any other area in the state. So I was proud to give us more than our fair share. So I think we need to continue our work with broadband. I also sit on a broadband advisory committee with a lot of stakeholders. And so that's one of the things that's still a main focus. With that, we're going to have to re-jumpstart the tourism and the economy here in the Northwoods. School funding always on the front burner, making sure that our schools aren't forgotten. So those are the things that, that we're going to need to do, in addition to helping out all these folks that have been suffering with the pandemic in terms of hospitality businesses, resorts, mom and pop places. Those places are going to need help coming up.
Mr. Bangstad, what's your vision for the Northwoods?
So I think that that reports will show that there's been a mass transfer of wealth from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy in much of America, but especially here in the Northwoods. Many of our jobs are low-paying jobs. Unfortunately, both Representative Swearingen and I have restaurants, and those jobs aren't great. We need to figure out how the economy in the Northwoods can work for the middle class and the poor, and not just for corporations and the rich. So, you know, how do we do that? We have to get broadband here, and Representative Swearingen says that he was instrumental in bringing broadband. In 2014 to 18, when he was a representative and we had a Republican governor, they invested $4 million in broadband. In Minnesota, in 1 year, they invested $20 million in broadband. Now, in Wisconsin, when Evers was the governor, he had just allocated $24 million this year in broadband. So Representative Swearingen can say, great, like, I'm doing a lot, but it's a Democratic governor who made that happen.
Mr. Swearingen, you have 30 seconds if you like.
And I applaud that Democratic governor for making that happen. And I want to work with the PSC on those broadband grants and get them out to places like Vilas County, who has been absolutely spectacular in moving broadband forward in the Northwoods. Vilas County Economic Development Corporation, they do a fantastic job with that. And those are the types of things that we need. But I'm also worried about the worker shortage as well, especially in the Northwoods. You'll see places that are closed because they just don't have the people to work. And that's unfortunate. I don't have a solution for that, but I'm willing to work with folks to try to find one.
Mr. Banks, do you have 30 seconds if you like?
So I think Vilas County is the worst performing county for broadband in the entire state of Wisconsin. So Representative Swearingen can say all he wants to about actually helping now, but he's been elected, what, 5 times now? Like since 2011 or 12? Like, where was he? Where was he helping the Northwoods all the time that he was serving? He was letting us down. And the Northwoods is probably the worst for broadband. Minnesota is 9th for broadband connectivity in the state. Wisconsin is 37th. So he's not done enough while he was in office.
All right, there's a lot of topics. I don't have time to talk about everything. So we're going to do a little bit of a general question here. There's a lot of assumptions people can make on someone based off of which party they're running for. So is there anything that you look at your party and go, I do not agree with them on this? You have a stance that might be outside of the ordinary. We begin with Mr. Bangstad.
Yeah, this whole defund the police thing has bothered me because, you know, I own the Monaco Brewing Company. We work with the police all the time when people get too inebriated, and we need to, like, you know, have a partnership. And so, like, local police forces by and large are great, you know, and I thank them all. And I thank, you know, you guys in Monaco for helping us out all the time. So that to me has kind of resonated in a sour way. We do need to have, like, accreditation standards across the board between county police departments, that so everybody knows, no matter where they're from or what color they are, that they're going to be treated the same no matter where they go in Wisconsin. I agree with that. And we need to refund, like I said before, mental health, our mental health facilities, so that we can take those people out of the prison system and in the criminal system. So, but I disagree with that. It was a bad slogan, and unfortunately, my party's taken a lot of flack for that.
Mr. Swearingen, topics you feel like you break from your party?
Yeah, you know, I think one of my frustrations since being elected to the Assembly is actually educating my own colleagues on my side of the aisle that there's actually life north of Highway 64. So they sometimes don't understand, you know, issues like broadband or school funding or high-cost transportation for these schools. And so it's kind of all-encompassing sometimes just to get them up north and see what we do with logging, for instance, and how important it is in the Northwoods. Beyond that, gas tax. You know, every session we talk about a gas tax. And I've had people talk to me and say, Rob, why not a nickel or a dime? So I do support a small, modest increase in gas tax. It may not be enough to fix what's going on with our rural roads and the huge deficit in the transportation budget, but that's something I'm willing to take a look at, is the gas tax.
Mr. Swearengin, you have 30 seconds. I'm sorry, Mr. Bankstead, you have 30 seconds. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're rebutting on this one because we just talked about new things. I think let's talk about tax for one. So a lot of Democrats are accused of trying to raise taxes on everybody. I don't think that's being said anywhere. And so my position on taxes in general is the rich are paying about 7% of their taxes. In like the top 10% are paying 7%. The rest of us are paying 10%. So the rich are not paying their fair share in taxes. And if we would increase that, we could pay for our roads. Mr. Swearengin, you have 30 seconds if you like it.
No, not really much to add. Like I say, just some general frustration of, you know, bringing our colleagues up north. When we get a chance to bring some of my assembly reps from down in the southern part of the state up north, it's always beneficial, both for us and for them.
All right, we're going to about wrap things up here with some closing statements. We're going to have 2 cracks this each. Mr. Swearengin went second in opening statements, so he'll kick things off for us.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank Channel 12 again for hosting this great debate. I think that's awesome. I'd like to take this opportunity to focus on comments and actions of my opponent over the last several months. In his own words, he said, "I could care less about being a state assemblyman." He's also been quoted as saying, "I have no personal desire to be in politics or to be in Madison." Also, in my opinion, he has insulted the residents of Minocqua and the Minocqua Police Department. Most recently, he has engaged with the United County Zoning Office, and I remain shocked that someone running to be a lawmaker believes the current laws don't apply to him. Tonight, I believe there was a significant difference between my opponent and myself. The next state budget will be challenging, and we should not raise taxes. We must prioritize hardworking families throughout Wisconsin, and it's important the state does not spend beyond its means. The Northwoods is a special place because of the people that live here, and I have fought to keep rural Wisconsin issues at the forefront, whether that's addressing the unique challenges that rural schools face, keeping property taxes low, health care, tourism, supporting our great sportsmen and women, and expanding broadband. I'm Rob Swearengin, and I am reapplying to the voters of the 34th Assembly District to be your state representative, and I'm humbly asking for your vote on November 3rd.
Mr. Banks, you have a minute for closing remarks.
So we're in probably the strangest time in Wisconsin that I've ever lived through. You know, I grew up here, like I said, and I've never seen this state as weak as it is right now. We've got a global pandemic. We've got an economic collapse, and we've got an attack on our democracy. So, you know, as like Rob said, like I didn't want to be an assemblyman. It's not my goal in life is to collect a paycheck and not do a whole lot. But I feel like somebody's got to step in and lead. And so I will promise that if you elect me, I will choose our health over politics. I will make our economy work for the poor and the middle class as opposed to the rich and the corporations. And finally, I won't let these guys take away your vote. I won't let them gerrymander the districts. And I will make sure that we can go back to the Wisconsin nice that I grew up with, which says we treat each other fairly and with respect. Thank you. Mr.
Swearengin, 15 seconds if you want it for anything else.
I'm just not sure that the Northwoods is ready for a Harvard opera singer to represent us. I think he's out of touch with the community. He's only had a business here 5 or 6 years, and he's not the best representation that we need in Madison.
Mr. Banks, 15 seconds if you like.
It's telling that he doesn't want a Harvard guy to represent them. Apparently he doesn't like intelligence. That's what's showing in Wisconsin, because there's a lack of intelligence and planning and actual leadership happening with his party. And so I would vote for intelligence. I don't know about you. I don't think I want to vote for idiocy.
I'd like to thank both our candidates and you at home for watching tonight. This is the 34th Assembly District debate here on Newswatch 12. If you missed any of it, we'll have it posted on Facebook very shortly. We also have 2 more debates coming up Friday at 7 p.m. next against the 7th Congressional rematch, Tom Tiffany and Tricia Zunker, and 1 week after that as well. We'll see you soon.